Are we ready to rock? Okay. Well, good evening, everyone. I will now call to order the THPRD Board of Directors work session for March 12th, 2025. Jessica, could you please call roll?
Here.
Ian Pink here. Barbie Miner
Here.
Alfredo Moreno.
Here.
Felisa Montflake.
Okay. I think our first item of business, I will be turning it over to our Deputy General Manager, Aisha, and Communications Director, Holly Thompson, and we're going to do some future focus work. So thank you for being here. Let's get going.
We are pulling up the presentation. There it went. Okay, we got it. Here we go.
Okay, good evening, members of the board. Aisha and I are here tonight to talk with you about the future, a little future focus of what's ahead. This is a slide that you all saw at the budget committee, and we went over it really quickly. We're going to go over it in greater detail this evening. And I'm going to say a few opening words that are not particularly comfortable for staff to say. And that is, we really want you to understand that what you see on this slide is big. It's going to take a lot of work to get each one of these things done. It's going to take attention and focus and resources and staff time. And that's on top of the day-to-day operational management of the district. And some of the things that are on this list are, one might use the words generational. Right? Like when we look at bond replacement, and I embarrassingly made people raise their hand about who was here last time in 2008, and it was a minority of us, right? So there's a learning curve of going through things for the first time. There's a learning curve of not having done it before. Some things on here are instrumental to our timeline, replacing and updating legacy technology systems that, have been with us some 15 years, some 10 years, takes a lot of work and time. So when we get to the end of the presentation, we're going to be asking you, did we get this list right? And if there's things that you want to add over the next 3 to 4 years that are really big ticket items, we're going to make you do something that's not really comfortable for any of us. And we're going to talk about what goes off, because we've got a full plate with this list and with our day-to-day operational management. So when I say it's uncomfortable, we always want to meet your needs. We always want to make sure that we're rowing in the right direction and we're delivering on your priorities and your big ticket items for the district. So we want to make sure we've got this list right, because we think this is the list and we know it's going to keep our plates full. Are we cool? And you're not mad at us? Good. Because we never like limiting.
So when Holly talked about generational decisions that we're making and generational moves, one of those is our consolidated administration and operations facility. And this is something that is in progress. It is happening now. And as a reminder, this was not something we sought out to do. This was an opportunity that came our way when the Timbers made their offer to purchase our existing operations center. What we're very excited about here is the opportunity to expand our existing complex, because the proposed building is located adjacent to our northern property line at the HMT Center. We are really looking forward to the possibility of creating a space that brings all of our staff not already located in recreation centers or facilities into one location where we can, further break down silos, work together and collaborate in ways we haven't been able to do with a portion of our staff being located at the admin office and the balance over at Fano Creek. So there's a bunch of other things that come along with this opportunity that we're also very excited about, and we'll be able to talk more about in the future. But one of those things is that if we were to free up space at that admin office, that gives us an opportunity to turn that space back over to the public and serve in a new way that we don't currently provide at HMT. So very excited about the potential for this new operations center.
But the point being, if you've moved your house, it's a lot of work. Now imagine moving out of a building that staff have been working out of and collecting items and everything that's in there. That's a lot of work to make that move happen and get everything settled.
We're contemplating requiring mandatory watchings of Marie Kondo. So in conjunction with that effort of, really making that generational shift to set our agency up for the future, we're also contemplating what it means when funds start getting paid off from the 2008 bond and our ability to kind of roll into a new bond program that continues the investment that our community's been willing to make in us and go after what would be a replacement bond. So this would be something that we could potentially take to the voters as early as May of 2026. And we are preparing ourselves for this conversation to develop a package that we can bring to you, that we can work through a task force with, and really get some guidance on what the package looks like, how much of that package will be taking care of what we've got, which was a key levy task force recommendation when we spoke with them in 2023. And also what level of new might happen with that. And so we do have a presentation after this one where we'll get into much more detail about the bond replacement, but work is underway on that. And we will talk with you on an ongoing basis about how we're preparing for this ask.
And let's pull from our experience of the May 24 levy. We knew what that took. Imagine that for this and more. Okay, we are also working on our website replacement. So this is our next big step. We finished up the implementation of Tyler Munis and changing over our financial system. We are releasing our request for solicitations this week. It is out the door. We're asking for firms to help us with updating our website. We will be transitioning to a website that has better mobile design. Ours is 10 years old. I think it's definitely more designed for a desktop focus than a mobile, and that is not current to the world. We are behind the times in terms of language access. We want to improve our ADA compliance as well. And we want to make the navigation easier. We really want to make it people first, make it less about how we're organized and how we see THPRD from the inside, more about how the community needs to access and get information. We are on track with this project to have our website updated by December of 2025. We are timing that specifically because we want to land between registration cycles so we don't, rock anyone's world right before registration. That's a really good time for us to do this work and get it implemented. And this is our big front door to getting ready for registration system replacement as well. So this is going to take some effort and we're excited to get it moving. The other thing that is currently underway is we just literally completed an assessment of our IT department. So this is in line with one of our budget priorities about investing in technology. The IT department is under the communications division, so I have the privilege of working with this staff. And what I can tell you is it was time to take a look at our structure, our staffing, our roles, our responsibilities, our policies. We have a department with staff that are working really hard, but we're working day to day, and we got to take some steps back, and we've got to develop the processes and the policies to set us up for the future. And I really want to see this department. And again, I cannot say enough that we have quality people, but we've got to move from a reactive state to a proactive state where we are ahead of issues and not years behind trying to figure out how to catch up. So we worked with Barry Dunn, who was our technology consultants as well, that helped us with Tyler Munis implementation. We had an outstanding project manager. Her job is to help IT departments literally across the nation with the tools you need to set yourselves up for success. One of the biggest lessons we learned was that we didn't have the right staffing structure. We didn't have the right policies in place. And for the next year, we're going to be developing a lot of those policies and procedures to set us up for the future. Now, one thing that we talked about for a second at the budget committee that I really want to highlight is there's some synergy between these efforts. One area that we're increasingly paying more and more attention to, as all government agencies are, is resiliency, modernization, and security, making sure that as threats are emerging, that we are making sure our systems are safe, that we are going to be able to keep going, and we're safe from cybersecurity threats. What I can say is I'm so happy we're moving to a new location, because we will be setting up an appropriate server room at the new location and be able to build that out. And that whole section of the assessment is going to have a lot of green checks. It's going to feel really good. And the timing of having this report telling us what we need to do to improve our setup and the move is perfect synergy and timing. So that's super, super exciting. Right now, we are in the midst of restructuring the department. We had one IT manager with no supervisors. So we're setting up two supervisory units where we will have applications on one side and networks and systems on another, to free up that manager to be able to do that policy level work where we're behind, and give our staff the lead support that they need to do their jobs. We've also been doing a lot of cross training. We were not set up in a cross training environment. We had people very siloed. So it was very difficult during gaps, leaves of absence, changeovers in employees. So we're doing a lot of good governance basics to build our bench and make sure that we're set up for the future. This assessment is going to be a multi-year implementation. So when you looked at that first slide, there's a reason it went through to the future. It's something that is very long-term that we'll be working through year over year.
So that was an item that's one of our budget priorities. So investing in employees and technology had been our statement for this year and our guiding light. That's the technology side. This is our people side. One of the things that has come around this year, like it does every 3 years, is our collective bargaining agreement and our need to update that and create a successor agreement with the partnership of our represented staff members in the bargaining unit. So we have kicked this process off a couple of months behind schedule, but we have a committed team in place, both on the management side and on the labor side, to really focus in on what needs to be updated in this agreement. And we are in the process. So we held our first meeting, our first bargaining session last week. We will be meeting every 2 weeks until probably late May. And we would hope to bring to you a successor agreement for approval, adoption in June.
And then after we finish website replacement, but actually a little bit before, by the end of this year, we anticipate beginning requirements work for our registration system replacement. Again, this is going to be a big change for the district. You know, our legacy registration system that we appreciate but know has met its purpose in life. It's time to move on. It was built in-house, right? That's not the future. That's not where we're headed. We're going to be going to an off-the-shelf system. So we have a lot of work to be doing our requirements, understanding our needs. We've got culture change as an organization because we're not going to have the same level of customization and tweaks. So we've got to adjust our knowledge and our stance as we learn these new systems and understand what will work best for us. And it will take a lot of cross-organizational collaboration strongly tied with the rec division to find the right product for our needs. We will have public involvement participation in that so that we get community interest and feedback as we're going along as well. So we anticipate being able to begin the business requirements work that happens, and then we'll work over this over the next couple of years after that. And just when you thought you were done with the May 2024 levy, It will be time to think of our future. So remember, we were lucky to have the voters support a 5-year operational levy. That levy was designed imagining that we would be going back out to the community to ask for a continuation. Our goal is to keep that rate the same. We continue to strive to hold that goal and meet that goal, but we will have to go to the voters and we will have to make our case. And looking at our time frame, we know that work will begin in 2028. We'll have to go through a similar process as we did before in terms of task force participation, public information campaign, understanding how to communicate with the public, why they might consider investing in THPRD's operational levy. And just by way of reminder, you all were actively involved with that, but you know, it was 129 public meetings, events, activities, presentations, nearly 5,000 people that we directly interacted with, an extensive amount of public information materials that we put out the door. So a lot of work and focus will go to this. And again, it's a ball that can't be dropped, right? This levy represents 20% of our operating funds year over year. So it's vital that we continue to support that work.
And so those were the big ticket items. Those are the generational moves. And these are the balance of the work that is still out there to be done on a daily, monthly, weekly basis. You know that we come to you each year with updates on the strategic plan. We talk to you as we're drafting our budgets and identifying where we're going to be spending our time on the activities we're going to be doing in support of delivering on recommendations in that 3 to 5 year strategic plan. We've talked to you about the equity strategy and how that's going to be something that we annually look at and apply to all the different work we do. We've committed to expanding our financial aid. That was a key thing that we heard about the levy and the chances that could keep some people from interacting with us. So we really want to balance that out with providing more assistance to folks that need that. Of course, there in the middle, my dream come true, asset management implementation. We're really looking forward to being able to share with you soon some work that we've done to identify some different tools and come up with a recommendation on where we grow our organization. We cannot keep track of everything a 270,000 person serving agency takes care of in this district on Excel spreadsheets. We are reaching the max of what we can do with Excel. So we're excited about that. We also have made some choices to seek out additional funding. And this was part of that financial futures work and looking at different ways that we can diversify the dollars that we're able to capture. And what that looks like is something that we're excited to continue down the path of. We've had staff that have spent time going to learn about resource allocation and financial sustainability, and we want to bring that back because it's been a long time since we've had that conversation with you and with our community. So we want to talk more about how we make the choices we make about where we allocate the dollars that come in. And then an ongoing effort, and it's no small thing, is what mainly this gentleman right here does a lot of, and it's our board, our government relations, our relationship building and development of partnerships with local agencies, other parties, electeds. It's tremendous work. It helps us stay connected. It helps us leverage and maximize what we're able to do in the community. And that is something that's going to be key to the success of all the work that we're doing.
And the key to this slide is that everything on here is not at that first graphic level of those big legacy projects, but these are big ticket items. They're new things. They're things that go beyond our day-to-day operational work of what we do every year and we know how to do. And they're going to take time, attention, and resources in a limited resource environment. So with that, we want to turn it over to you and invite a discussion from the board. And we just want to check in of, did we get that focus list correct? Are the right things on there? How do you feel about that list? And if we're missing something or you want to change something, how do we get there?
Fantastic. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I will open it up to my peers first. Anyone want to comment and take a stab?
I can jump in. This is super helpful. Thank you very much. Thank you for not all getting into the fetal position on the ground. A lot. My question is a little bit is really just focused on registration system. I'm sensitive to the fact that it was the only thing that we called out in the levy as being a new thing that you're going to get, or we're going to start working on is what we said. I'm just wondering, storytelling, what opportunities are there to share what we're working on it? The slide, I get it, especially based on IT assessment and recalibrating that. And looks like the website refresh is already underway. What can we share with folks that isn't like we're planning to maybe start in 3 years or so? So
I love your question. And I think that the importance of your question is delivering on our promises in the levy. And what you have just articulated is how essential it is that we deliver on that registration system before we go to the voters and ask for the levy renewal. And so we've got to keep that in mind. Now, I have the administrative burden of like, how do you do stuff? And the reality of it is we've got to get those pieces in place on the IT assessment, because part of why we needed to do the assessment was to set the stage to be able to do this work. And so the assessment sets us up to be able to deliver. And we're working on those job description updates and the restructuring that we need to do to be able to do that. So I think from a communications standpoint, it's essential that we deliver on the registration system before we ask for the levy renewal.
it's helpful for us to know as we hear things and hear to be able to explain the pieces that have to be right before you have to have a good stance in terms of your organizational structure before you put a bunch of weight on the squat bar and try, right? So that's helpful. Yeah, I think, it just food for thought. I think yes, our registration system is kind of like a beloved old car you drove in high school. It seems like it's kind of like, it's no one's favorite thing to look at, but we've registered a lot of people through it, and that it was a homegrown solution. And I think there may be opportunities to kind of I don't know, give it a farewell if that helps people understand. It's not that we just don't know how to, it's just as the district and as this area has grown and grown and grown. But I mean, I think we register a lot of people every single turn, every season through that registration system, which doesn't look great. But and a new solution is coming. But I'm just saying, I think when people just don't know any of the story and don't know, and that's stuff that we can share. But I think it's been very functional, if not a work of aesthetic art. And so I would hope that people can understand that, how that started and it's kind of a timestamp of where this community was, and as we grow, things change, but that it's not just this horrible thing that we don't know how we got it. And anyway,
One thing I want to point out though is that we've also changed our position on the registration system. IT used to take a really strong role, like, we're not changing it, don't do anything that isn't in the system. And through the advocacy of the rec division, there's some things that we just can't make work in that system. And so, for example, we were able to create a different way for tennis reservations outside of the system that is working so much more efficiently. David in this room helped work on that. Julie helped advocate for it. And, that's an example of how we're also trying to meet people during this gap time. And we are way more flexible now about trying to come up with temporary solutions to make life easier for folks where our registration system isn't able to meet our needs right now. Because we can do two things. We can come up with interim solutions to make it better for the community while keeping our eyes on the prize for the long-term change we need.
Yeah, Miles, over to you.
I'll go really quick then. I really appreciate the mapping out of things and you guys do wonderful work and I have full trust in you and I'm just like at awe of all the things that you guys can accomplish as staff. So I'm just really appreciative because I know you're presenting this and I know we're just gonna kick it out of the ballpark as usual. So I have no worries. Everything here makes sense to me. Everything seems it's appropriate as far as like time and investment and planning to make sure that we hit that mark. And so yeah, all I have is gratitude. So thank you.
Yeah, I want to echo the gratitude. I think my comments are a mixture of comments and some questions. My first one is the around the bargaining. I remember us talking about like tentatively accepting for another year the current contract, and then that's what the conversations will kick in for when that contract. So we gave ourselves a buffer year. Is that correct? Am I remembering that correct?
There was some conversation about that. I think Steve would probably be best positioned to respond.
Okay.
Sure. So yeah, the last time we were here talking, we had proposed the option of a rollover to give us some breathing room to kind of regroup due to the late start. The union declined that offer, and so they wanted to get started. We were fine with that, and so we made some. And later in the executive session, we'll do kind of the update on bargaining, and I'll get a little more into the details. But we were able to make some agreements that we think will work for that process, and it's moving forward.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Great. Cool. Thanks. More of a comment on the staffing with the IT. I had written some questions, but you answered them as I was writing them. The cross-training thing I'm really excited about. That was like the big thing is like I wanted to make sure that as we revitalize our tech in the district, that we're able to retain the team that we have. And I love that we're going to help them grow as our district grows. So very thankful for that. One of the things I was thinking about with the levy was I love the idea of us keeping it at the same rate. I am wondering about the reality of how our economy is changing. And there's a lot of unknowns with some of the things happening at the federal level. And I'm wondering if there is thoughts of how we might supplement if we do when we go to the ballot keep it at the same rate, or if there's some considerations about indexing with what we see happening nationwide.
I can attack that. I think some of it is really monitoring what's happening out because you're right. The playing field is shifting. The goalposts seem to be moving, and sometimes they're perpendicular, and all of a sudden you're absolutely in the wrong place. The reality is, I think. We'll better be able to evaluate that. One of the things Jared has done a great job of doing is looking at that 10-year forecast and constantly reminding us that's in order to achieve that goal of extending an additional 5 years at the same rate, every decision we make, every budget season is critical. It either enables carry forward or it dings carry forward. I think it's going to be a combination of efforts, monitoring our environment that we're in. The state resources. Is property tax going to be the only solution? And we keep working on all that.
And I definitely want to give a shout out to Jared. I'm thinking about the budget meeting that we just recently had, and I really appreciate how you answered questions from our budget committee members, kind of relating to why we do things the way we do. Last note is just on the governmental relations side of things. I love, this is more of a comment. I just love that we are doing that. As I've had the opportunity to interact with other local government agencies from other states, as well as kind of associations, Oregon's really unique in the West Coast. And I know that you all know that, but a big shout out to the work that you all are doing on that front and continue to put emphasis on. So thank you. Those are my comments.
Thank you, thank you. I'll keep brief, other than to say this like speaks to the Barbie operational project management heart of what I do in my day job. Scope, schedule, budget, scope, schedule, budget. And that's all of what you're identifying here. And so there's a human component of how we can put things on paper that plot them and make them seem wonderful. And then when you actually run the water through the pipes, it's all of the things that are unanticipated. So a comment on that side to just say, this is plotted lovely, and you all do a fantastic, consistent job of keeping us informed. But when the things do start to shift, and that potentially may mean that other humans are needed to help provide what's here, that we just stay close on that. Because I think to your point of this is long range planning, we can all say today, this is where we want to go. But the realities are going to shift. And once we start actually implementing them, that may mean that we have other choices that we need to make. So just a request to keep us super informed, because it would be a real shame to have any of these things listed here that we see as a benefit for the greater community fail because our internal team is suffering because of the demands that are placed on them. And being a person who's had to move in their job multiple times, different buildings on campus and whatnot, there's that learning curve, right? Of just the human nature of who moved my cheese. And that has an impact on morale, and that has an impact on efficiencies, and just, you know, learning where the new meeting room is. And we always met Tuesdays at this place, and now it takes 20 minutes to get to that place, so we're not meeting there anymore. So I'm just very mindful of the human component that is not represented here, and just want to give a shout out to that. My second will be to echo Alfredo's comments on the registration system. My one over the top, if I could just underscore, is when I look at all of these things, they are the magic and the secret sauce and the not glamorous part that the public will see and feel and touch and know, right? So operations and all of these things, a website, and it is what is needed to be done to ensure that we have the longevity and we have the forefront of security and technology and all of the things. But your everyday person, step one, if it's not on the website, is step two to register. And so you talked me down a little bit from maybe how hot I was going to come in on, like, can we make it any quicker, in you sharing, Holly, that there's some interim solutions. So I would just echo that if there are ways in between that we can make those marginal improvements, I want us to just remember that that's an immediate community touch point that we chronically hear. And so I think any progress in the interim that we can make, knowing that that's that moment of engagement, I would elevate it in our priorities.
So I love that comment, and I'm going to daylight something for you, but it's kind of funny. The underlining software that our existing registration system is written in is not going to be supported after a certain date. Does this sound familiar to the financial system? So knowing that we're about to hit that window, IT, we opened the door. We reached out to RAC and we said, hey, while we still have this level of support, if there are tiny tweaks that we can make to the system, we're not going to do 1,000 things, but if there are some small things that we can do to make life easier. So we did a tweak on financial aid that makes the administrative processing of it so much easier. And right now we have a partnership between Rec Division staff and IT to identify. We're negotiating on that number. I'm not going to tell you how high it was and how small mine is. We're negotiating on what those are. One of the things on there that I really want to make happen is reoccurring payments, right? Like, so we are doing exactly what you're saying. We are trying to find what are the things that would make the user's life the easiest that we could fix right now in the existing system without sinking too much effort into it for the return to make life easier through this implementation. And we're working on that list right now in lockstep with Rec Division. And Barbie, I love what you said about the human element, and I just want to acknowledge that. Olivia in finance made a comment in a meeting, and it's so important. I think it's important to share here. She was talking about the new financial system, and she was saying it's really wonderful and it's great to have it, but it also still takes learning every time. And every time of the year, you're doing different functions. And even though it's easier, and even though it's going to be better, there's a learning time factor and a drag on staff time as we're remembering the old system might have been clunky, but we all had muscle memory. So thank you for acknowledging that human element, because all of these changes have those components in them.
So all I had.
Please get me on the record to sign up for the dirtiest move job you can,
Okay.
seen or not.
I'll be a registration
There you
tester.
go.
Any other questions that y'all need from us? Is that
Nope, great.
okay?
Thank you.
All right, then I will move us on. I think you two are staying, but we are also welcoming Mr. Bruce. And we'll talk 2026 bonds.
Here we go. So
Time work.
So we are here to talk to you about the 2026 bond preparation. And Holly did have a slide, but she's also monitoring our folks who might be joining us soon. So she may or may not jump in to do that slide. If not, we got it. We got it. But Bruce and I are here to talk to you about the work that we've coordinated to date on preparing for that potential renewal of the 2008 bond. So Bruce will work the slides for us, I think, and give us a little bit of background.
Yeah, so these are some of the original marketing materials that went out to folks back in 2007, 8. And it was a really exciting process for us. And I think we learned a lot through that process that we're moving forward. At the time, it was a $100 million bond measure, which was a pretty good number for that time period. And you recall that was the very beginning of some hard economic times for folks. In that process of going through, we sold bonds at numerous times, and we were able to do some great service to our community by refinancing them at certain times to get a better rate, which lowered what folks had to pay, but they still got the value out of it. And what's going to start to happen in 2027 is we have the ability to go back to the voters and say, if you keep paying the same rate or possibly less, these are the things we can do for you. The longer we wait after that, what they are paying could change. And what we don't want to do is have them pay one thing this time and then have the change another time. We want to be as consistent as we can and clear with them. Back in 2008, we had 5 bond categories, and we did a huge variety of projects, probably more projects than we initially anticipated doing, but we just kept going and going. And I think we're all really proud of the things that were accomplished. And I will show you just a little bit more detail. I mean, we did huge numbers of things across the entire district. We were really conscientious about putting projects in different quadrants that serve different needs that the Park District had. And we did really well. And in some cases, we exceeded the things that we had set out to do. Moving forward.
We're now talking about what the vision for the next 20 years could look like. I think you're familiar with the Hidden Creek play equipment, ORO. And I will admit to putting in a picture of my child to this presentation. That is little Rhodes doing some climbing. He thought that was a pretty great playground as well. And so really what we wanted to contemplate as we go forward, and what we're really interested in maybe hearing some feedback from you, perhaps not tonight, but over the course of us updating you on our work here is, you know, what does this bond look like for us? Because as I mentioned earlier, we really heard quite clearly from that levy task force that they were concerned about our ability to maintain all that we have, given the size of our district over time, especially if there was a focus on adding new, which there was a pretty significant focus on adding some new things when we went through the 2008 bond. There are certainly properties outside in our district that are undeveloped that people want to know what's going to happen with those, but there's also well-loved facilities, trails, play equipment, lots and lots of very old play equipment across our district that that we need to have a plan for. And so we want to talk with you about what our strategy has been in coming up with a list, where we might want to make some tweaks as we move forward. And of course, that's all going to be informed by the outreach and engagement work that is done later this year. So on the next slide, we wanted to talk a little bit about the timeline. So we started this work last year. We started thinking about it. One thing that is going to be really critical for us developing what we should be prioritizing and what we should be putting our resources toward is the updating of several functional plans. And there is a presentation later tonight. Everything's just fitting together so nicely. A presentation later tonight about the work that we're doing with functional plans. So we have 5 current functional plans. One was recently updated about 2 years ago, and 4 are being updated now, and we're also developing another one. So these functional plans are where we talk about how we do the things that we do. And it's the rationale that we use to come to you in an annual budgeting process and say, we think these are the next projects that we should spend system development charges on. We think these are the next replacement projects based on condition. So it's really putting into writing what that criteria and what the rationale is. So we've been talking internally, we've developed an internal team, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But the concept and ideation of the bond, replacement bond, is happening now. As we've moved into 2025, we've formalized that internal bond team, which includes members from across our organization. We've really worked hard on what should those bond categories be based on everything we've learned and everything we know. We think that these are the categories that make the most sense. We started some financial analysis and looked at how much it'll cost to do some of these projects. And for specific projects, we've actually worked hard to try and define what the costs would be. As we move into the next phase, later this spring and into the summer, we anticipate really getting into that engagement work. And so this is work that Holly's team is going to do, working with Bruce and I and the rest of that bond team, is doing the work to pull out what is the public going to support? What do they want to see? And we do anticipate a task force being established as part of that. We thought that was such a valuable exercise when we went through the levy work. So what that will culminate in is later this year, towards the end of the year, we would come back to you with that task force recommendation on whether or not you as a board would like to refer to our voters the ask for a renewal bond. And so that would probably be maybe December-ish. At that point, we could begin the public information campaign. We'd really hone in on what the package that's going out to the public looks like, and it would ultimately be decided at that May 2026 election. So next slide. To tell you a little bit more about the bond team that we've established, we really wanted to get our planning folks, our design folks, and all of the people that work within our parks and recreations and trails to inform what they see out there. What are the well-loved spaces that are reaching the end of their lives that really need to be considered when we're talking about a potential replacement bond that might be more focused on replacing and taking care of what we've got. So we're bringing that group together. The other information that we're considering is our district values, knowing what your guidance to us has been, what our different plans, these functional plans, tell us about what's important, what we learned when we went through the 2008 bond, how we heard from the public in our levy task force. And then, of course, there will be opportunities for stakeholder input along the way. Next slide, please. So Bruce is going to talk to you a little bit about this green box.
This is a really simplified version of a really complex spreadsheet that we made up. And what we're trying to do when we're recommending projects for consideration is think about all the different ways we can fund those. Is what's the best way to fund them? Do these things support the values that the board has expressed and that we've heard through our various planning processes, i.e. comprehensive plan, vision action plan? And then do those items have community support? We recognize some of them are not sexy, but they're really necessary. Some of them are much loved and need to be renewed. And so we're trying to put together a package that marries all these things. We've started to rank them, at least the initial ideas, into these different priority categories based on the different things that we think are important or are going to be useful for this funding source. And as noted, we have a team from all kinds of different departments, all kinds of different angles, and we we're enjoying the process, but we recognize we're making recommendations here and we need more feedback as we move through it. We took a look at the original categories, that we had in the 2008 bond. We kept some and some we updated to represent some of the things that maybe we hadn't focused on as much or that we felt we needed more of. And so the first one, recreation parks and community spaces, this is anything that is happening outdoors. That is outside of a natural area, I should note. Buildings and facilities, I hope is somewhat self-explanatory, right? This is our pools, our indoor spaces, our recreation centers. Environmental stewardship is a broadened category from the last bond, which was really specific to natural resources. And here, environmental stewardship includes things like our climate action plan. It includes making our buildings possibly in some ways more sustainable that are a little bit beyond the immediate things for patrons to experience. Our accessible and safe takes a really broad perspective in that it's going to emphasize some of the Americans with Disability Act things that we haven't found the funding to do. It also looks at safety and possibly remodeling certain facilities to better serve everybody. And it also includes some behind the scenes stuff that folks won't see, but they need. The last piece is connected trails, and it's a lot focusing on finishing gaps in our system, as well as moving things to meet standards where they're too narrow, steep, etc. So in this next slide, I'm going to very briefly go over just a couple of examples. And as Aisha mentioned, destination parks is something we don't have a lot of. That could be something that is new, it's exciting, and it needs just a little boost. It also includes replacing a lot of much loved, still safe, but playgrounds that are reaching the end of their lifespan, for example. In the buildings and facilities category, we have lots of things that are just like, hey, we're going to upgrade the heating ventilation system in this building, right? We're going to replace a roof. Ain't fun, but it keeps the doors open, it keeps the programs going. And then we have some more exciting and unique things like a complete reimagination of the Beaverton Swim Center and how it can accommodate differently than it does now and possibly serve more people and different types of programs. In the environmental stewardship, there are still some key pieces of natural area land that would be useful to acquire, both for public access as well as for habitat preservation. And then there would be things, again, from the climate action plan that we don't normally have the funding to, for example, like installing solar panels that would make us more financially and environmentally sustainable. A good example for accessible and safe is reimagining how the Cedar Hills Recreation Center entrance looks. Right, our desk is in one corner. There's a big staircase. There's a more accessible thing in the back corner of the building. If we move the office in one direction, change doors, it could make it more welcoming and more safe and more secure for everyone. In our connected trails area, the Fano Creek Trail goes through Greenway Park. It's almost a mile long. Sometimes it's underwater. Some of it doesn't meet our current trail standards, and it's highly used. So this is a case of if we had we're able to make one big investment, there's an economy of scale there for our community, also improves capacity. So what kind of process, when we look at the process, we've got the example I mentioned of staff are putting together packages and programs we think meet values. That will come out as a set of proposed projects as we move through some of the community input and engagement. Those will be refined. We're looking forward to having a bond task force similar to the levy task force, because that seemed like a really good way to get interested community members both to review and connect with the community. And then ultimately they'll bring things to you along with some staff recommendations, of course, and you'll make some decisions and recommendations to us. One of the things that we're going to do a fair bit differently than the last bond measure is, and this tube here is an illustration of that's all the funds that are available. we intend to have a core set of advertised projects that we really focus on. And then we'll have some money set aside. What we found is with the duration of time we spent on the bond, some things got more expensive, some things didn't. We also advertised a lot of stuff that we scrambled to find funding for in the end. And what we'd like to do is be able to meet all the expectations of the public, and then hopefully with the remaining funds, do just a little bit more.
So we did lose Holly to managing our guests out in the lobby. So I will cover the community engagement slide we have here. And so you've heard about the bond task force. Again, this is something that Bruce had a meeting today with engagement staff on starting that recruitment for the task force in the spring. We would meet over the summer and fall and then come to you with recommendations later in the fall. We have talked in the past about the polling work that was done for the levy. We still anticipate doing some of that work, but Holly has talked to you in the past about some of the initial result analysis that we looked at from the votes that we had in the May 2024 levy vote. And there were some key areas that we wanted to dig in more on. And so rather than polling those areas, her interest was in doing some targeted focus group work. So we want to do that, and we would do that prior to the polling to kind of better understand the messaging that we're hearing from those communities and feed that into our polling effort, ask the right questions to get, really meaningful feedback. From that, as we did with the levy, we take the findings that we hear from our community about what would compel them to vote or not vote. And when we're building that messaging platform, we're using that, what's going to get somebody engaged? What are they most interested in hearing? So we can build that into our toolkit and take that out as part of the public information campaign, which would only start once. And if you were to refer that ballot measure for the vote, we would start public information campaigning. So that is our strategy on community engagement. And we do have a new member of our team, Chelsea Nykirk, who is supporting our park services staff, but she's housed within Q Communications. And she's going to be doing a great amount of work keeping us moving forward in the community engagement phase.
So what happens from here is we're going to integrate feedback that we get. We're really working hard right now to refine those projects. And then ultimately we move on to the polling and outreach like we mentioned. So it's a pretty clear process. It also has a really defined timeline. And in order to hit that May target, if we choose to go there, we need to figure out a bunch of stuff in advance.
So we're interested in any feedback you're interested in providing to us tonight. We do anticipate coming back to you and soliciting more input along the way, but if there's anything that you would like to talk to us about, whether you have a kind of a sense for how much of the bond effort should be focused on taking care of what we've got versus the new certain areas. Do you think we got the bond categories right? Is there something you think might be missing? That would all be very helpful to know.
Yeah. You seem eager.
No, I just,
Let's go Alfredo.
I'm first all the time. Yeah, that's great. I also had written down earlier in the week, just careful expanding footprint, exclamation point, which you are. And then I was just kind of thinking about what would be the easiest wins stuff. I had kind of lost track of the idea of like a marquee thing, like a headliner on the concert poster, but where are some like good things that aren't gonna be here? They're gonna be right here. They're gonna make an impact for a lot of people. But absolutely agree that your HVACs and all the things that keep our facilities from falling into disrepair are going to be a huge part. Nobody cares about it until it's broken. So that's just the reality of it. So, but no, these are all great. I look forward to kind of engaging more as we go through it.
Others.
I don't have a ton. a funny comment. I was 15 when the bond passed the first time.
Funny for you.
Sorry, y'all. My one real note would just be, I do love how we're thinking about that tube of funding and how the advertised projects as well as the additional projects. I just think also, and this will be, I think, a great discussion point for the bond task force, is how we communicate that to the public. I'm just always mindful about how our taxpayers think about the way that our dollars are spent. And so I just want to be mindful of how we communicate the investment and strategy behind that.
I'll try to keep this brief because we're almost out of time. But to jump on that, I think that we've learned from our recent bond that storytelling is really important. So as we move forward, I think we need to highlight all the things that our current bond has accomplished and do a better storytelling of that. And I would encourage, should this bond pass, that we in real time tell that story also, so that we don't have to proactively push people in the end before they vote that, this is all the things that we've done, but rather that everybody knows of it before the decision has to be made. As it goes without saying, our vision task force and all the information there, that is our golden standard. That's still my golden standard. So everything should be kind of found or pulled out from there, definitely. I will say, I don't think Four Seasons Parks was there, but Four Seasons Parks, multi-generational parks, and I love destination parks. I've always said that that was something important. Like, kids don't know Hidden Creek Park, but they definitely know Monkey Park or Troll Park, whatever people. It's a very big discussion what it is. But so I definitely support all of that. I definitely support new and shiny things. As far as rebuilding or refurbishing and rebuilding, if we can, I would really like to put like an energy efficient spin to it, so people think they're not just fixing something that's broken, but that we're investing to do something bigger and better. So if we have that messaging when we think of the things we do, and as with any energy efficient things, you do have to invest more money to get that. So I think that's something that's the public would understand with all that conversation. And that's all I have. That is all I have. So thank you.
Thank you for going quickly. You're very thoughtful. First comment, appreciate the runway of time that we have, and we're doing this now. So just want to say thanks for getting us ahead of this so that we actually understand the cadence and we're not in necessarily a crunch time. I think I'm an outside the box thinker. So this is work session, which means you're just soliciting. So the diagram that shows the next steps, there's like project proposals, and then it goes over here, and then like the board shows up towards the end. I would love to hear what the proposed projects are. Will we be welcomed as a part of that? Or, okay, you're shaking your head. I think I would, as a thinker and a processor, it would be helpful to know the variety. You've provided buckets to help, but if I'm to choose and to try to pull on levers, I think it would be invaluable to hear directly from the staff before we get in with a task force to know the reasoning behind why these projects are bubbling up the way that they are. So I don't know if that's another work session, if we do something different and we all brainstorm together, or y'all are already doing that and it's something that we could just be flies on the wall to listen to. But I think there's a little bit more of the why that I would love to be a part of that. It would help me make my decision of where to place emphasis. Yes, I think I will leave my comments at that.
Would you like to see that first round of projects that are in the blue box there?
I personally, yes,
Okay.
I would.
And then we can come back around after the community engagement and.
Love it.
Okay.
Yep.
Great.
I just had one last really quick note.
Go for it.
Task force, I would just encourage us to look at, especially just on the heels of the levy, like where did some of our most constructive criticism come? I'm thinking of like, some emails we got that really pushed on our math and things like that. I want to be feel really good that we had a pretty good cross section of people who are inclined to support if we win, they're not inclined to oppose just for the sake of opposition, but I guess I'm trying to say I don't want to have too many cheerleaders in that, and so I want to feel comfortable that we've scrubbed this against some people who have a little healthy skepticism. And yeah, so that would be my only note on that.
We as staff have also looked at where people have voted for past bond measures of various sorts, and we can share that information too, so you can see some of the strategy or some of the challenges there.
I remembered my last thing, it's just a random thought. As we're rebuilding the website, if these tracks were to go along, if I'm taking your cue from the success of 2008, maybe there's even a way on the website that we can start to stamp certain things. Like I think of like USDA approved, chunk. Like maybe there's a little stamp that we can say that's like courtesy of the 2008 bond measure. So there's passive storytelling that's happening as well. So if I'm going and I'm trying to find a new destination park within, and I can look and go, oh, that was funded by had no clue that maybe there's some storytelling we can weave at the same time we're redoing the website to just elevate and differentiate. I think that was the biggest hurdle that I experienced, was having to educate the difference between the two and what we were doing. And because these are so close in proximity, I worry about that component as well of like, well, I thought to the average taxpayer, we just did this. Well, they're different. And this was shiny new. This was like, keep what you got. And so if we can elevate hey, you get something new and have that reflected on our website while we're redoing it, maybe that's an easy low-hanging fruit win. Okay, I respect that we are over time. Do you all have everything that you need? Okay, then I will close our work session and I guess, can we transition quickly into executive session?
I'll be.